All right. Hey, how you guys doing today? Just getting off work. It's the night shift, as you can see, right? It's cold night tonight. Actually, give me a second. Thank you for bearing with me while I put on these gloves. Oh, I don't have those like little touch gloves. You know what I'm talking about? The gloves that have like a little touch thing on them. I need to get myself some of those. Those things are fancy. Well, I wonder if they actually work though, you know? I just go into a place, try them on, and then I'd feel like I'm a superstar. Okay. Oh, what's banging around in my head today? Well, sorry guys, I'm just coming down from like a shift. Holy cow. Things happened. I won't go into it. Whew. So, what's been banging around in my head today is actually the big news about Mr. Jordan Peterson. I've sort of been not wanting to talk about Jordan Peterson because I just don't think he's actually that credible or interesting a figure any longer. But he definitely does stand out as the kind of North American voice of neoliberalism, right? He is this voice that stands up and says, your problems are your own. Society, or the government, if you prefer, doesn't have responsibility to take care of you. Stand up straight with your shoulders back, clean your room, forge ahead, do what you can. Everyone's suffering, everyone's experiencing pain. I understand that you haven't been receiving support, but you can still fight for yourself. And all of that is actually, there's nothing wrong with saying, get up, do better. And if Jordan Peterson was happy with being if he was happy with being a cheerleader for people, you know, like a support system or a self-help kind of a person, I actually think that he is quite a commendable person for that, for that specific thing. I know I actually came to Jordan Peterson in that moment in my life when I needed a voice to say things like he says. So, and I want to be upfront and honest about that when I talk about Jordan Peterson, that he helped me without a doubt. His book, 12 Rules of Life, helped me, without a doubt. I like I'm a rural man. I've come from rural Manitoba. He's a rural Albertan. The way he speaks is with this straightforward, no-nonsense, rural attitude and mindset that speaks to me and speaks to lots of people in this country and in America, without a doubt, who have that sentimentality and who are looking for ways to improve their own life. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Where Jordan Peterson begins to experience mental constipation, as I like to call it, is when he steps into the realm of social commentary. The second he becomes a social commentarian, if you prefer, it's very, very clear that he has no larger perspective or outward. He's not able to imagine himself as outside of the system that he is in, outside of the structure, outside of the nation, peering down upon it, which is what you're doing when you have a social commentary. When you are making social commentary, you begin by separating yourself from that society and from observing all pieces of that society. If you want to be a good social commentator, that's what you do. And there are many avenues that allow you to do this. His own field, sociology is one of them. Economics, history. History is my favorite. Because if you don't know the history of a place, then you don't actually know what's going on in that place. You have no sense of it. And so, Jordan Peterson, his trouble is that he removes from the conversation the concept of fate, the concept that the world around you is littered with enormous systems that humans on a whole don't have control of. Not only the human-built systems, but the systems of nature, of the world, that are able to absolutely come in and crush an individual's dreams and goals and life into dust. And this idea that a single individual's effort would ever be able to stand against not even the collection of all other individuals' efforts, but the forces of the world around them, it's a laughable idea. Like, yes, absolutely, it's the individual's responsibility to fight for themselves, for their own individual status and place in the world. But if you are trying to pretend as though you are doing that in kind of an emptiness, or that there is no system that stands above you, well, then that's kind of a joke. And then when Peterson does acknowledge that there is a system, he says, well, here's the hierarchy, which is not a revelation. It's not really an intellectual thing to say. We know there's a hierarchy. But then that hierarchy is natural. That it is, you can see it in nature, therefore. You can see all kinds of things in nature. This argument, this has got to be the most just blatantly closed way of thinking about hierarchies. You can find all kinds of systems that exist in nature that don't exist in our human society, and that you would absolutely not want to exist in our human society. You can see, like, he uses lobsters as a way to show and illustrate this hierarchy. Well, why not use bees? There's this misnomer that bees operate as a hive mind. You know, they have a hive, that the queen makes decisions, but that's simply not true. Bees make decisions democratically. They come to a consensus as a hive, and the queen is brought along with the consensus. Oh, well, what does that have to say about Mr. Peterson's hierarchical systems as a natural force? Well, I guess a democratic democratic decision making. Well, that looks like it's a natural force too. Oh, it turns out that humans who are capable of complex and abstract thought are also capable of changing the systems they live in. It just so happens that the one we live under is the one that has been maintained by force for the longest. And every time another system attempts to assert itself, another way of thought, well, what happens to it? It's destroyed by force. Oh, well, I guess that's just natural, right? That things be destroyed by force. Well, that's an interesting position to take. The irony of this is that, and the reason I talk about it today, is that Mr. Peterson is today incapacitated due to he's dealing with an illness. And illness is exactly the right thing for us to be talking about within this concept of individual power and individual strength. That, well, if the forces of nature decide that you go down, you go down. Too bad. Doesn't matter how hard you worked. Doesn't matter how tough you are. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. You go down, you go down. He's very fortunate that he's a Canadian citizen. So that means that his socialized healthcare system, where we all collectively get together to support ourselves as a society, to say that no one who falls over stays over. If you are sick, we will pick you back up as a collective, as a community, together, put you back on your feet, and you won't pay a nickel for it. We won't expect anything from you. We're going to streamline this system to make sure that you get the best care that we can offer, and it doesn't cripple you financially, which flouts every single aspect of his ideological position. If you want to see Peterson's ideological position at work, you go down to the States. You go take a look. How's that going for them? Where they pay double for worse service, and people go bankrupt and are abandoned and are told, sorry, your insurance ran out, time to go home and die. And yet, here's Mr. Peterson taking advantage of the collective socialized healthcare system, telling everybody, oh no, it's up to you as the individual to change your ways. That's what has to happen. Certainly we shouldn't get together as a people. Certainly we shouldn't get together, critique the system we're under, and try and change it. And Mr. Peterson's very forthright on this point, which is, well, that sounds like Marxism. And as we all know, because of the 1950s and 60s McCarthyian propaganda that he is obviously a proponent of, because that's all he has. He doesn't actually know what he's talking about. We know that Marxism is evil. And why do we know Marxism is evil? Because a guy named Stalin, who lived after Marx was dead, did some bad things. That's the argument. I can't imagine a stupider way of looking at the world. And it is stupid. Like, it's not mistaken. It's not in an accuracy. It's not even a misdirection. It's not even a lie. It's just stupid. If you thought that way about any subject, you would receive a failing grade walking into a classroom. Imagine if you walked into a classroom and said, Christ is evil. How do we know that? Because of the Inquisition. That's how we know Christ is evil. It's a stupid thing to say. It's a stupid thing to believe. And a man of his position, with his tenure and his prestigious education, should know better, but he doesn't. So, that raises a lot of questions. And ultimately, as Mr. Peterson goes through this disease, and God help him, I don't want any man to go through suffering or disease. I don't wish that on him, and I hope he recovers from it. But that is fate. That is fate that did that to him. There's no individual action that he could have taken to prevent it. There's no individual action that he did to wish it upon him. The powers of the universe declared it so, and he is left to deal with it. And whether or not he is forced to deal with it as an individual, or if he's permitted to deal with it with his community, who is there to support him, Well, that's not a matter of individual choice. That is a collective decision that we all make together. Here in Canada, we made the decision a while back that no one should be discarded and all should have access to health care. And it turns out that's the way to do it. Of course, that's under threat because of our incompetent, sociopathic, conservative governments. But that's another talk for another time as I'm walking into my home. Jordan Peterson's not an evil man. He just has mental constipation. He sees the world no farther than his own two eyes. He has no outside perspective. And he doesn't even know his own history, his own family history. He grew up on an Albertan ranch. That means at some point his family was given 360 acres of free land. Why? For moving to Alberta. That's the Dominion Act of Canada, if you want to look it up. What would you do with 360 acres of free land given to you by the largest government handout in history? Do you think you would succeed? I think so. Oh well. I hope you guys are having a good time. I love you all. Have fun out there. Mwah.